Exit Online are hosting the session, and in this short introduction we will show you how to use some of the features you may need today. My colleague Maliana Limbu will be your host and Karen Bainton your trainer. First of all, please can I check that you can all hear me? You should be able to see a poll on screen. If you can hear me, please click the button next to yes. Thank you. There are a number of ways that you can communicate with us today. The main way is via the chat windows that you will see on every screen. Thank you to those who introduced themselves in the chat window earlier. There are two types of chat window. The first, on the right of your screen, is titled Questions for your trainer and host. When you type into this window, your question will not be seen by other participants, but will come through to us in the background. Your trainer will answer your questions at specific points, so please don't expect an immediate response. If you have any general or technical questions, your host will help you. Please be aware that connection problems can be beyond our control. The second type of chat window is for sharing ideas with the whole group. Anything you type into these windows can be seen by other participants. At certain points today, you will be asked to vote in polls. I'd like to reassure you that polls are anonymous. Other participants will see how many people have voted for each option, but will not know who has voted for what. You can now see the results of the poll we asked earlier. During today's event, you will notice that some windows provide a full screen button in the top right-hand corner. Pressing this button will make the document full screen. To return to the normal view, simply press this button again. About halfway through today's training, there will be a 5-minute break. So now it is with great pleasure that I hand you over to your host Maliana and your trainer Karen, who will take you through today's training. Over to you, Karen.
Good evening and welcome to our online training session. I'd like to start, before I begin, I'd like to confirm that I will not be referring to future question papers in today's training, and that is the case in all AQA training courses. Can I also emphasise that specimen question papers and mark schemes, as well as student exemplars, are also freely available to all teachers via the AQA website. Right, hello and welcome from me. My name's Karen Bainton. Just a little bit of an introduction to myself. I've been a member of the senior team for GCSE food preparation from its actual start. So I've been in there right from the beginning. I'm a very recently retired teacher with 37 years teaching experience in a northeastern comprehensive school behind me. So I think that whatever you throw at me, I'm fully prepared to take on board and probably have similar experiences. So we'll start today by just basically telling you a little bit about what the details of the course will be, and then I'll have a little bit of an icebreaker so I've got a feel for what people are actually participating today. So during the evening, the course is going to cover the following aspects of the NEA assessment, predominantly looking at the NEA 2. I'll start by going through the off-call changes for the assessment for 2020-21. We'll then reflect on the NEA from past years, and then look at expectations, planning and delivery of the NEA 2 for 2020-21. Hopefully I will be able to share with you some successful teaching and learning strategies for the delivery of the NEA 2, and then I will disseminate the mark scheme. You'll have the opportunity to do some assessment of work against the mark scheme, the marking criteria, and then I will actually go through looking at modelling and good practices and sharing examples of the NEA with you. As I've said today, the focus is predominantly on the NEA 2 food preparation and technical skills. So if we can start with a little activity first, so if we could have the poll on the screen please, and I'd just like you to think about what you thought were some positive aspects of the NEA 2 and some questions that you might like to think. But before that, I would like to get a feel of what schools and what type of people we actually have participating today. So if you could just vote as to the type of centre that you were in, and I can see that we've got centres from right across the board. A lot of people from the state sector as well as the independent sector. I've got NQTs right the way through to people with over 20 years experience, and also some head of departments in this afternoon. And some of you are training on your own. However, there are some of you training alongside colleagues, which is quite reassuring. So nice to have such a wide selection of people participating this afternoon. What I'd like you to do now is to actually look at the questions which are on the screen, please. So if we could go back to the PowerPoint. And there are two questions that I would like you to think about. And what I'd like you to do is to write down any key questions you would like answered related to the NEA 2 food preparation. And hopefully through the course of today's training session I will answer those questions for you. However, if any of those questions still remain unanswered at the end of the session, there will be some time dedicated to that, so that all answers will be provided for you. So if you could just think of some questions that you feel you've come here that you would like to have answered and type them into the screen now, and then obviously we can actually make sure that we've answered those questions for you by the end of the session. So anything related to NEA 2 food preparation, and then anything that I haven't answered during the training session, we'll concentrate on that at the end. I'll just give you a minute or so to write that down. Today's session is split into two sections. So to start with, I will look at the off-call changes that we have for the assessment of the NEA for 2020-21. I'll then go into detail about the Task 2 food preparation and feed back to you the lead moderator comments with his recommendations from the last moderation session. We'll also look at ways of planning a food preparation task, and then I will spend some time giving you clear explanation on the expectations of both Section B and Section D. That's the technical skills section and the making of the final dishes. When I've completed that, we'll have a short break of 5 minutes, and then after the break we'll move on to the clear explanation and expectations for Section B and D, focusing on analysis and evaluation of those sections, and then we'll have the opportunity to do some assessment of the NEA 2 against the marking criteria. I'll now very quickly go through the off-call changes that have been published for the assessment of the non-examined units for 2020 to 21 only at the moment. The NEA 1 food investigation task, which was worth 15% of the overall mark, has actually been removed. Now that is for 2020 to 21 only, and that is to accommodate public health restrictions. They felt it was necessary to remove that task. There have been some changes to the NEA 2, the food preparation task. That still remains worth 50% of the final mark and will remain as part of the assessment with the following changes. They have reduced the requirement of the NEA 2 to 2 dishes to be completed within the 3-hour practical examination. That's a reduction of down to 2 dishes from 3. However, the assessment and marking requirements will still remain unchanged. On the screen now, you will see that I've actually put up the 3 tasks that have been set by AQA this year. The changes that have been made with the reduction in the number of dishes is to help facilitate the delivery of the NEA 2 and also to enable centres to cover the remainder of the specification. Obviously, teaching time was very disrupted due to lockdown in the spring summer term, so therefore the reduction is to help accommodate centres to enable them to cover that missed teaching time, to get the specification completely covered, and also facilitate the delivery of the NEA 2. Further guidance has been provided about the changes, and any changes that have been made are sidebarred in the guidance document to make it clear to teachers, and that is there to assist teachers with the delivery of the NEA 2. That document is available on the AQA website and is just in the basic website. It's not in the secure area. So there is further guidance that has been published by our chief moderator, and that is there to help with assessment of and delivery of the NEA. So if we could now move into a little activity just to get us thinking about the NEA 2 and when we last delivered it. If we can think about what were the positive aspects of the delivery of NEA 2, what were the challenges for the NEA 2 for students and teachers, what did your students enjoy, and what have you learned from the delivery of the NEA 2 in the past, and what changes will you make for NEA 2 in 2020 to 21? And what is the best advice you would give to someone teaching the NEA for the first time? So if I could have the screen for people to actually type their answers into there, please. I'm aware I'm being bombarded by questions at the moment. I will get them sent through to me from the background, and if I can answer some of them as I go, I will do. However, I will try and answer the questions as I go through each section. Anything that I don't answer, please flag up for me at the end, and we will go through that. So I can see people are typing in. Some of the positive aspects are that students did enjoy the NEA. Not so many wasted ingredients this year is popping up. Students were keen to show their skills and enjoyed their skills. They enjoyed cooking and presenting the dishes. Lots of positives popping through here. Able to get their teeth into a specific topic and apply nutritional knowledge. That's a really reassuring comment. Great to have a 3-hour window to cook. Yes, I appreciate that. We do have a little bit of a problem now with shortened lessons. However, some of the issues, yes, motivation to actually type up, yes, I think we all find that is an issue. Keeping motivated to complete the actual the task. The planning, yes, planning to actually get the exam completed. Having to have timetable changes, yes, that can be a challenge. NEA 1 being challenging for the lower ability students, yes, that is a comment that does crop up quite a lot. Having access to computers is an issue. However, students can handwrite. I know sometimes they find that quite difficult, but there is also the option that they can handwrite if you do have that problem. What did the students enjoy? The cooking, the food and the preparation, the final practical, cooking and modifying the dishes. Yes, lots of positives as to what they enjoyed. They did enjoy the NEA 2. Presenting their dishes, that's what they really do. And then some of the things that, some of the approaches. Practice in the summer of year 10, there's some good advice. Very structured to allow for differentiation in bite-sized pieces. Live demos from chefs and people in industry. I think that's a very good point. Use of YouTube videos if they're appropriate. And students. Some students were motivated to actually cook during lockdown. That's a very, very reassuring comment being made there. And using year 10 wisely to ensure that high level skills are actually covered in in year 10 so that they have that experience before we tackle the NEA 2. And some of the things people are saying, getting parents on board, I think that's very important, and publishing the dates of the practical exam well in advance so they do realise that the exam is taking place and that there will be some preparation required. Setting realistic deadlines and then sticking to those deadlines, that's a very, very good suggestion. Keeping your timescales realistic. Work backwards with planning dates, that's a very good suggestion, especially if school is limiting time when the practicals can be carried out. I think if you do work backwards from your cut-off point, you do actually see that the time that you do have and how quickly it does chip away. One of my recommendations would be to make sure that you get your NEA 2 out of the way to allow sufficient time for revision and not to let it run into that time, because it can easily do that. So sticking to deadlines is a very, very good one. And begin early, and yes, take into consideration mock examinations, because they do take out quite a chunk of the time available to us, especially if schools do have 2 sets of mock exams. Right, some very, very positive comments coming through there, which is really reassuring. We have had a very challenging year, and it's really reassuring to see how positive you all are still standing, regardless of what we've gone through in the last year. So what I would like to do now is to move back to the PowerPoint so that we can actually move on with the training. And the first thing I'm going to do is to give you a breakdown of the marking criteria, just as a reminder. The NEA 2 is broken up into 5 sections. We have the research of the task, which is worth 6 marks, the demonstration of the technical skills, which is worth 18 marks, and when I talk through that, I will point out to you that those 18 marks are not solely for practical work, which is a little bit of a problem in some centres. They forget about the review of the technical skills. We then have the planning for the final menu, which is a further 8 marks, 30 marks for making of the final dishes, and then 8 marks for analysis and evaluation, which is section E, and that is sometimes a section that has a little bit of neglect. It doesn't have the rigour that we would quite often look for, and marks are easily lost in that section. So if we'll start by reflecting on the NEA task and looking at some of the comments that we found from moderation in the last series, and hopefully can give some advice as to how you could actually improve in those sections. Before I start, I want to point out that there are archived tasks available for 2021, and they are accessed via the secure site at AQA. I do need to point out to you that the archived tasks are students' work from previous years, so they will be making 3 dishes in their section D in these archived tasks. And just a reminder that in 2021 you're only required 2 dishes to be made in that 3-hour practical. To access EAQA, you will need to obtain a login from your examinations officer. And that will give you access to the secure site at AQA. So when researching the task, we found that quite often the research has not always been analysed. And where that's taken place, this results in ideas being presented that are not always relevant to the task. So quite often they'll do their research and then they'll go off at a tangent, and they'll sort of slip away from the actual task that has been set. The research, when it is analysed, has often varied in quality, and often students failed to clearly state what they'd found out and how they would use it. So when they do their research, it's best that they then analyse and say what are the important parts that they've actually found and how they're going to use that in their next in the next sections. And it would be helpful to include some analysis after the research to show the link between the research and the choice of dishes, so how they've actually used the research to choose the dishes. Students need to consider the dishes they wish to make carefully to enable that they can illustrate a good range of technical skills and that they're not repeating the same skills in each dish. So they need to be planned carefully. And when selecting the dishes, they need to identify a range of technical skills used in the making of the dishes. Now, one way that they consider a wide range of ideas could be through mind mapping or annotated images. And from those images, they could actually list the technical skills that they could be using in each dish, and then it does focus on them where they are and are not repeating the skills. Now, often ideas that are produced have little relation to the research or the task. Each section should be linked, and therefore there should be some link from the research to the actual dishes that they're using, and that should link to the original task. The choice of dishes should be fully justified and then related to the research findings and the task. And the recording of 4 to 6 ideas should allow students to show a good range of skills using different ingredients and processes, and that is a reduced number from prior years, again with COVID in consideration there. Now the next slide shows an example of how you can justify the selection of dishes. So the choice of the name of the dish. Now I will point out here that there were images on the slide here, but because of copyright reasons they've had to be removed. So an image of the potential dish with a reference to where it's from, the reasons why that dish has been chosen, and then a list of the skills involved, and then the students can get an idea of what they're actually skills they're using and where they are where they're repeating or not repeating. So that is an example of good practice. Some useful guidance that you could give your students. Now you could give these as questions to them to answer, to see if they have actually covered these things. Analyse the task and explain what they need to do to answer the task successfully. So before they start, actually breaking that task down into smaller pieces and thinking, what do I actually have to do and how am I going to do that? And then the research that they're going to do, it does need to be focused. So it needs to be focused on either a life stage, a dietary group, or on a culinary tradition, and they are the 3 areas that each of the tasks will focus on. So they need to choose which one task and then focus on that area. It may be appropriate to collect information using primary sources such as interviewing, as well as secondary sources. However, if they do an interview, they must use that information when it comes to choosing their dishes. So it does have to actually be linked to their choice of dishes. The research should be concise and purposeful. We don't want a huge amount of research, and the more able students are able to do that, to write concisely is a high ability skill. So it should be concise and purposeful. And if they actually decide at the beginning what they need to do, they can then make their research focused and therefore keep it concise. And then they need to summarise the research and identify a range of suitable dishes to make whilst considering the skills required to make the dishes. They need to consider a wide range of ideas that could be made, and again that could be by using a mind map, or again it could be annotated images. List the technical skills used in each dish. Again, that could be an annotation around an image. Select and justify the dishes that they're going to make that use a variety of technical skills. And then again, there's a slight change here. Students will make up to 3 of these dishes. So that's a slight reduction in the number of dishes that we're expecting for 2020-21. And the dishes should show different and not repetitive making skills. The dishes they select should reflect the research findings. They can make both sweet and savoury dishes. However, it's not acceptable for them to make purely sweet dishes. That's not in the going along with the ethos of the course, but a selection of sweet and savoury is acceptable. And this is an excellent opportunity to experiment, be creative, showcase students' food and showcase their students' food preparation and technical skills. So this is their opportunity to say, look, this is what I can do, and this is how well I can actually prepare food. Moving on to section B. Section B is where they are demonstrating their technical skills. This is the actual making of the trial dishes, and photograph evidence must be provided of these finished dishes. Moderation is very difficult when there's no photographic evidence available, and that where there's a limited qualitative commentary on the candidate record form. So we do ask that you complete the candidate record form for both sections B and sections D, telling us how well your students have performed in those practical sessions, and that should be added onto the candidate record form. I'll talk about the candidate record form in more detail a little bit later. Technical reviews for section B are often overmarked. We do need the candidates or the students to review their technical skills, and that review should be used when they come to choose what they're making for their section D dishes. And often section B is overmarked because the technical reviews are not there or are not in the detail that we would expect. Select and justify the dishes to make that use a variety of technical skills, and then the students will make 3 of those dishes. So they need to be selecting and justifying what they're making and then making up to 3 of those dishes. It's important that complex technical skills are executed to a high standard. It doesn't follow that if a student attempts to fillet a fish, that will automatically result in high marks. And the example I often give for that is, if a student fillets a fish and most of the fish is left on the bones at the end, yes, that is a high skill, but it hasn't been executed to a high standard, so it would not therefore automatically result in a high mark. So students need to choose their complex technical skills that they are capable of achieving and executing to a high standard. Dishes need to include a range of skills rather than being repetitive in the skills that they show, and we find that quite often that is the case. So they do need to be very, very careful when choosing their dishes. And quite often there's a limited review of the technical skills. The making needs to be justified with a review of the technical skills and how they actually performed in that session. So here's an example of how a review can actually be presented, a good example where photographic evidence has been taken of the technical skills, and that has been included in the portfolio with some annotation around it. So the reasons for choice: a piped fish pie with a bechamel sauce, reasons for the choice, linking it to the task, then outlining the skills that are involved in the making of that dish. photographic evidence of stages. You don't have to include photographic evidence of each stage, but if you have the opportunity to be able to do that, it is very helpful. And we can see as moderators from that photographic evidence that technical skill is being carried out to a high standard, and then hopefully that will back up the marks that have been awarded by the member of staff. They need to provide evidence of a review of their technical skills through the evaluation, and that can be through annotated sketches. It could be just a little comment about a review or an evaluation of how well they performed. And remember, they're only making up to 3 dishes for this year. So some guidance to give your students for section B. Encourage students to experiment with new practical skills, as well as to develop and refine existing skills. Get students to ask relevant questions to check the dishes that they decide to make are suitable. So, for example, are the dishes suitable for the choice of task? And do they reflect the findings of the research? So if they're doing a task for a teenager, are these dishes suitable for a teenager? Are they suitable for whatever culture? But ask the question, are they suitable for the task? Is there a wide range of skills, processes, techniques and cooking methods included? And to make sure that they're not repeating the same skill throughout. And another very important question is, how will the dishes be presented? So a checklist before they actually decide what they are going to do. And then they make up to 3 of these dishes. So the students need to record the results of their making. There needs to be photographic evidence with the name of the student, or the centre. It needs to have their name. You could include the centre number. What I have is a box with laminated names and student numbers, and the centre number if you want to add that on, just so that it can be got out quickly at the end of what are often very, very frantic practical sessions, and then photographic evidence. I find it's not often wise to rely on students taking their own photographs on their phones if they're allowed them in school, because quite often they do get lost. I know it can be quite a chore, but the photographic evidence is a requirement of the specification, so they do need to have that with their name on. And then around the photographs, they can include annotation, and included in the evaluation of their technical skills, they do need to have some results of sensory analysis. Now I will talk a little bit about sensory analysis and COVID in a later slide. Before I move on to section C, I can see there are an awful lot of questions flying in. I'll try and answer a few of them. Someone's asking, do the 3 dishes need to be made during the technical skills to achieve a higher mark? I think the technical skills are what we're looking at there. It's a maximum of 3 dishes. If there are 2 dishes which include high technical skills that are carried out to a high level, that would not stop them. The two dishes would not prevent them getting into the higher mark bands, but they would have to be including high level skills. Asking, do you have to reduce the delivery of practical work, or is this an option to reduce it? It's just giving an option of doing up to 3. It used to be 3 to 4. They've just reduced it by 1 to allow for the teaching of the specification. Someone's asking if it can complete it this side of the year. All of the practical work will have to be completed in the academic year that they actually sit the exam. So depending on when you decide to do your NEA 2 in your school, that would determine when you do your practical work. I hope that answers your question. What is the best way to do the costing? In the past, I've always used Jenny Ridgewell. I'm not sure what other there are other sites available, but I couldn't recommend one at the moment. Sorry, I'm not being very helpful with that one. There's someone having a question there about accessing ingredients from the supermarket because of the second lockdown. From what I can gather and from what has been said by the Prime Minister, that there's not a shortage of food. I don't know. I can't really comment whether that will be the case, but I would hope that isn't going to be the case this time. I have got a question here that I can answer. Can we use writing frames for the use of low ability? Writing frames are not really meant to be used, and that is from Ofqual. There is some guidance regarding the use of writing frames. I know that some students do need a little bit more support, but writing frames are not meant to be used. Right, I will come back to the PowerPoint now and move on into section C. I will come back to questions at a later time. So in section C, what we're doing is that we are planning for the final menu. That's the final 2 dishes, remember, that will be made in the 3-hour practical exam. And quite often we see that centres will often misinterpret the specification, and the same dishes are made in sections B and D. That's not meant to happen. That is not what we're expecting. Section B is not meant to be a practice run for the making of the final dishes. It's acceptable and encouraged to use some of the same skills in the making, but it must be for different dishes. There must be some development of dishes from section B to D, and again a range of technical skills being used and different skills as far as possible. Yes, there will be some repeated skills, but we would advise and hopefully expect to see some further new technical skills into section D. There must be clear links between each section of the NEA. Often they're quite disjointed, and we like to see the work flow from each section, and students are not always able to fully justify the recipe choices for the final dishes. And therefore presenting a detailed evaluation of section B is a bit of an issue. So when they're not linking this, and often they're not linking it to why the recipes why recipes were chosen for section D. So in section B, they should be doing a review of their dishes. Then in section C, following on with the choice of the dishes that they're going to make in section D, and then give the reasons why they were chosen and what changes have been made, as well as linking obviously to the highest the different technical skills. The 2 final dishes must not be remakes of the original dishes in section B. Students will use their skills to research, modify and create new dishes to answer the task. So a little bit of modification to create a new dish. And to achieve top mark bands, food safety terminology and a wider use of key food safety temperatures should be included when producing the time plan. It's not sufficient just to say wash your hands to kill germs, or cook until it's hot, or to get into that top mark band they need to be specific. They should be stating temperatures, stating equipment, use of food probes, use of antibacterial cleaner, food safety terminology, cross-contamination, different chopping boards, the colours, all the way through the time plan, and that is what we expect to get them up into that higher mark band. So just some good practice here of how to justify final dishes, linking it to section B. So the final dish here, the example is lasagna with salad. The candidate stating it's a complex dish, it requires pasta, a bolognese and a white sauce. It's a high scale, going to make all the components including the pasta, and then they're linking it back to the dish they made in section D. Made ravioli, in my questionnaire, linking it then back to the research. 4 out of 8 teenagers preferred lasagna to the other dishes, showing it to be popular. So linking why they've changed from the lasagna to the changed from the ravioli to the lasagna. They've added that extra skill with the white sauce, and then linking it back to their research and to the task. And then at the bottom, actually indicating which of the skills that they're using. Now the chart that they've used there of the 12 skills, that's actually from the specification. So they've just copied the chart from the specification and then indicated with a cross which of the skills they are using in that dish. I've got a question here about the practical exam. I'll come on to that when we move on to onto section D. So another way of justifying the dishes, again, planning for the final menu, the dish, the link to the dish in section B, cooking methods, sensory properties of the dish. They're looking at food provenance in there, the costing, the technical skills involved, and the sensory properties. So full justification and linking it back to the dishes that they made in section B. And then just another way of doing that is in a chart with the 3 dishes and then technical skills, sensory qualities, linking it back to the task. So just examples of good practice of how your students can actually justify the choice. Now this is an example of what actually we are looking for in the time plan for students to get up into that top mark band. So we're looking for a dovetailed time plan. We're looking at dishes that are made dovetailed throughout the 3-hour session. And then in a third column we're looking at some key temperatures and key food safety points. So we've got the inside needing to be 75 degrees C, ensuring that it's kept out of the danger zone, and then water boiling up to 100 C. So key temperatures are there so that we are getting up into that top mark band. Right. What we're going to do now, we're actually going to do an activity, and while you're doing this activity I'll have a look through the questions that have been flying in and see if I can pick out some to answer. We're going to do an activity where we are going to look at exemplifying sections B and D, and on your screen now you will see that there is an example of the Asian cuisine that we completed a few years ago, and the 3 dishes that the students actually chosen to make. I'd like you to look at the 3 dishes and first of all tell me what is wrong with the selection of dishes for the task 1, and then can you suggest some alternatives. I'll give you a couple of minutes to do that. Right, so I can see straight away a lot of you have realised that yes, the dishes are too similar. They're far too similar. There's a lot of repetition of skills, lots of bread. We've got bread rolls, naan bread, curried pizza with a bread base, chicken in both of the dishes, both curries. So they are very, very similar, and the skills are repeated. So no variation. I think we've all got that. So if we can think of some alternatives to those dishes that would get rid of that repetition and the dishes being too similar. There's a nice idea of vegetable or meat samosas, and again that would add an extra skill. Both if it was a vegetable samosa, that can be a very technical skill for some students. So julienne or batons, the vegetables the same size, a photograph of that while they're doing it, that would get them some high marks. A different skill with the samosa, with the pastry and the folding. Fish rather than chicken, and the fish could be filleted if your candidate was sufficiently competent enough to do that. Someone suggesting that you could encourage the use of a sweet dish, side dishes, different ones. It could put a sagaloo in there, different Indian side dishes, or making their own sauces is another suggestion. Onion bhajis, people are suggesting for side dishes, samosas. I think we're coming up with some nice ideas. Someone's come up with a nice idea of spicy fish and potato fritters. Noodles could be included there, making your own noodles, stir fry, creating a marinade for the meat. So we're coming up with some really nice ideas. Bombay potatoes, changing the protein in the dish. Someone coming up with a spun rice or a pâté sucré bowl. That's quite a nice idea. So I think we've all have got the idea there. Pakoras is another one. Spicy chicken koftas is a nice one. Very topical, having one of the dishes as a vegan dish. Yes, that's a nice idea. So I think we've actually got a good idea of that one. So if we move back to the PowerPoint, we'll take this just a little stage further. And on this slide, you can see that we have 3 section B dishes. So we have a chicken cannelloni where they've made their own pasta, we have fish kebabs with flatbread, and we also have a vegetable quiche. So what I would like you to do here is to think of how those dishes could be modified and taken into section D, demonstrating further technical skills. So if we could look at that, and what could we do to actually make those section B dishes into a suitable section D. Straight away we've got some nice ideas with the lasagna, and a really nice idea there with a roasted vegetable lasagna, a fish pie. The dishes are a chicken cannelloni made with pasta, fish kebabs with flatbread, and a vegetable quiche. Suggestion of the fish kebabs could be made into fish cakes, and you could add a parsley sauce to that, or a white sauce. It could be a vegetable flan using puff pastry, someone suggesting. Ravioli is another suggestion. Someone suggesting coloured pasta, or maybe ravioli with 2 sauces. The coloured pasta could be coloured with vegetables, introducing, say, beetroot into the pasta. People are suggesting making the developing the vegetable quiche from a short crust pastry to a flaky or a puff pastry, and then maybe making it into individual pies or into a pasty. Suggestion of making the a fish pie from the kebabs, obviously with the bechamel sauce, and then piping the potato onto the top. Tortellini is another suggestion from the cannelloni. So we're coming up with some really nice ideas, and I think you have got the suggestion of how we are extending and changing. Now the suggestions that we came up with, taking the chicken cannelloni, I think a lot of you have actually got these ideas, but this is what we suggested. The cannelloni could then go to a ravioli with the pesto sauce, so we would have the making and the shaping of the pasta and the sealing, then the cooking of the pasta and filling and making a pesto sauce with the processor. We'd also have the sealing. Quite often that can be a difficult task. The fish pie, we could have the filleting of the fish, a roux sauce, and then the piping of the potato. And then the Mediterranean vegetable quiche we've suggested could be made into a Mediterranean soup, and then adding a flavoured bread. So making a stock, the vegetable preparation, the knife skills, and then the bread making and the shaping. You could even take that a step further and to make that into an enriched bread, which is classed as a high skill, like a brioche, and then the shaping, it could be plaiting or making it into different shaped bread rolls. So lots of different suggestions there, but I think we seem to have got the idea of how to take the section B dishes forward to section D, and adding to the skills. And also, very importantly, as I said, they need to justify their choices and to make sure that they are actually linked back to the task all the way. Right, so just giving some guidance for this section to your students. If we go back to the PowerPoint, students will decide on 2 dishes to make for the final assessment. I know I keep stressing that, 2 dishes. And the 2 selected dishes may include side dishes and accompaniments. The final dishes can use some of the technical skills, but they can't have been made previously as a whole dish. They can use some of the skills that they've used in section B, but they can't make the complete dish that they made in section B in section D. It needs to be changed. Students need to give reasons for choosing the dishes, and as I've already said, ask questions. Is it suitable to the task, to the group or the culture? And a detailed time plan, including all the stages of making in the correct order, including dovetailing, needs to be produced. And this should include the timings for each stage, and also the food safety considerations, including the appropriate temperature controls. They do need to have the dovetailing, appropriate timings, and the food safety considerations to be able to access those higher marks. And then the students should follow the time plan in the 3-hour practical exam. The practical work produced for the top band must be complex and challenging. With only 2 dishes, this will allow time to add complexity to the 2 dishes, and I think that answers some of the questions that I have seen popping up. Obviously, they still have the 3 hours, but only 2 dishes to produce, so that will give them time to add complexity and technical skills to their final dishes. And to achieve the high making marks, students need to show a comprehensive range of making skills. Low skills and a reliance on standard food components cannot achieve marks in the high mark band, even if they look absolutely stunningly presented. They cannot access those high mark bands. It is accepted that candidates with fewer making skills will select less skilled dishes, and this will be reflected in the marking. Obviously, we do have less able students, and I would say it's really important that the choice of dishes is very, very carefully, dishes are carefully chosen to fit with the student's abilities. Don't let students choose really, really high technical skills if they don't have the skills themselves to achieve those dishes to a high standard, because it will have an effect on the marking. Teacher annotation does need to be provided. There need to be qualitative comments related to the making ability of the students. Please don't just copy statements from the marking criteria. It's not helpful. We do need you to be quite qualitative and tell us exactly how your students have worked. And don't be afraid to say how well they've worked. You know, that is your opportunity to let us know just how well some of your students have performed and can perform. And it was unfortunate that the quality of some of the candidate record forms was disappointing and quite often didn't support the work the students produced. So it is important that it does support what the students have actually produced. So planning for the final menu, when students repeat the same dishes in section B and section D, this limits the marks that can be awarded. They cannot achieve the top mark band if they actually repeat the same dishes. And students' work must be authenticated. It should have photographic evidence included, clearly marked with the candidate's name and or number. And as I suggested, just a laminated box of names is what I used to use. I always used to have a spare sheet on normal paper, because you can guarantee that at some point they will get misplaced, but it just saves that time at the end of the practical session if that box is there and they can whip their name out and take the photograph. And very importantly, the two final dishes must be presented and photographed together so that it is proof that they were made in the 3-hour exam and at the same time. They can be photographed separate, but then they must also be a photograph of them together included in the portfolio. And the dishes do need to be made in school in the 3-hour practical time. Just an example now of the candidate record form. These candidate record forms were designed with teacher workload in mind, and sections B and D do need to be completed for the NEA 2. They're the two that we really do ask you to complete. They can be handwritten or they can be typed, and even if they're typed, there's very limited space to write into, so we're not asking for a huge amount of text. The space is very limited, even if it's typed. So there's just an example of a good example of a candidate record form, just stating what skills have actually been, what dishes have been made, how well the skills have been executed, how well the dishes have turned out, and then a comment to do with hygiene and safety and organisation. And if anything has been stood out, for example, on that section B, the teacher stating that there was a very good understanding of gelatinisation when making the sauce. So if the student's actually spoken to you about gelatinisation while making that sauce, put it on the form. Tell us the student knows what they're actually doing and they know the science behind the technical skills as well. That's a good example, good practice. And then an example of presentation of dishes. We are marking the actual the final look of the dish, the presentation. We do want them presented nicely. We don't ask for a complete breakdown stage by stage of the practical exam, but if you want to include examples of where technical skills have taken place, so examples of filleting chicken there, the students can also annotate that photographic evidence. They can point out on the pictures there the food hygiene, using the food safety and food hygiene, using the correct chopping techniques, the correct chopping boards, and it just all helps show their understanding. And then just a simple, don't spend hours on presentation of the table. We're not interested in what the table looks like. We don't want a place setting. We're interested in how the dishes look, how the dishes are garnished, decorated, how they're finished, and how they are then presented on the plate. We're not interested in table settings. Basically just the presentation and the high standard of presentation of the dishes. So that's one example there. So some guidance to give your students. So for the 3-hour practicals, students will need to be organised and fully prepared. They do need to plan. And on the day, students will need to prepare, cook and present the 2 final dishes, use a range of skills, equipment and processes, execute the technical skills with accuracy, have a good knowledge and application of food safety principles, show good organisation and good planning by using the time plan and dovetailing tasks. They are allowed to take in recipes into the 3-hour exam, that is allowed, but obviously they should really have the time plan so that they can just look at that and follow it. Obviously, you know, it takes time to flick through a recipe and to find where you're at, and it's time that's wasted. So good use of the time plan, good planning, and then they need to present the final dishes and ensure that the 2 final dishes are photographed together with the candidate's name and or candidate number on the same photograph. Right, moving on to section E, and this is your final section, which is the analysis and evaluation. And we quite often find that this section seems to be rushed. There are 8 marks available here, and quite often it can be the difference in a grade. So it does need to have some time spent on it, and what we're expecting here is that students are going to explain the nutritional data and costing of their final dishes, and marks are often given for the production of the data rather than the analysis and the evaluation. We're not interested in the production of the tables. What we're interested in is how they've looked at that data and how they've interpreted that and related that to their nutritional knowledge. So it's using the nutritional data and explaining what the implications are of that nutritional content of the food. So it's not just a matter of producing the data for the nutrition and the costing and sticking it on a page. They do actually have to interpret that to get up into the top mark bands. Now, timing we found is an issue. In some centres quite often don't devote the time that they need to ensure that the marking criteria is sufficiently covered. So there's a good example of a nutritional analysis. Again, the table there has actually been replaced, again due to copyright restrictions. The information is as was, but the table itself's been replaced. And what the candidate or student has done there is they've taken the nutritional analysis and they've related it to the teenagers. So they're showing that they do actually know how much protein the teenager needs, what the implications are of the energy that the dish produces for teenagers. They're looking at the fat and suggesting, you know, what the problems are with the fat. So they're actually applying the nutritional data to the nutritional to the teenagers. Another example of a way to do that, I know that looks quite small unfortunately, but we have an annotated sketch, we've got some sensory analysis, and we've got the nutritional analysis, and that has been presented by just writing around the information and again applying the nutritional data to the task and to the group. So guidance to give your students on section E is that once they've completed making the dishes, they need to carry out sensory evaluation in a home setting, especially now with the COVID situation. This can be achieved by setting up testing panels, and a variety of sensory analysis methods can be used. Ideally, not carrying out testing within the classroom environment. This is advised to prevent hygiene and safety issues related to COVID-19. So the testing needs to be carried out in the home setting. So it may be that your students do need to do a little bit of preparation around this evaluation before they actually do the exam, so that they don't forget to do this afterwards at home. And then they need to analyse and explain the cost of the 2 final dishes. They need to carry out the nutrition analysis. That can be done using a nutritional analysis program, or if you haven't got access to nutrition analysis programs, just the old-fashioned food tables from books. And identify any improvements that they could make to the final dishes. Now that could relate to cost, it could relate to sensory characteristics from their sensory evaluation, it could relate to the nutrition, or it could even relate to food provenance. And then at the very end they need to add a bibliography. So a student checklist that I do use with my students before I retired. I would give them a checklist of questions that they would go through and answer, and it just cross-references, have they actually covered everything that's required. So is the research well explained and related to the task? Is the work thoroughly planned with clear aims and conclusions? Is there an evidence of a range of technical skills when making? Is there justification for the choice of dishes at each stage? Has a time plan been produced with appropriate dovetailing? Was the practical assessment well planned and the time plan used? Was the level of organisation and food safety in the practical lessons good? Were the dishes finished to a high standard? And is there a good evidence of analysis and evaluation when carrying out sensory analysis? And is there an understanding and application of nutrition and costing? Right, I think it's about time now for us to take just a 5-minute break. Now, obviously, before you leave today, I don't mean now, I mean at the end of the day, but there is a survey that we would like you to complete, and there are the materials from today to download. We really do like you to complete the survey, just to let us know what you think of today's session and if there's anything we can do better. And where we can, we'll implement the improvements immediately. So it is quite a valuable task for us. So what we will do, we'll have a 5-minute break now. After the break, we'll come back and we'll actually have a look at some examples of materials and look at the assessment criteria, and we'll do some marking. So I'll take a 5-minute break, and I'll see you back at approximately 5:15. Okay, thank you. Right, hello, can everyone hear me again? I've had a quick look at some of the questions and I'll answer. I think quite a lot of them have been answered. But I will go back and go through some of the questions. Someone's asked if you can share slides. What I would recommend is that you don't share the full slides, but do share by all means the checklists that we've put on the slides that are for teachers and students. That would be very useful. I know someone's pointed a question, asked a question about COVID, sensory testing in school. I think I made that quite clear in the last slide that we don't advocate sensory testing in school because of COVID. And someone asked about COVID restrictions and pointing them out in the time plan. If students feel that they can do that, that would be good. It would show a health and safety point. People are asking about, do we want quality points? It's health and safety points that we're actually looking for. But if they want to put in some quality, that's fine, but it's the health and safety that we're looking for. Someone has asked if it says in the specification anywhere that the dishes should not be all sweet or all savoury. It doesn't actually state that, but it does state in the specification just the ethos of the course is healthy eating. So obviously all sweet dishes as the final menu would not be an appropriate choice if we're looking at the whole ethos, if we're looking at the holistically at the specification. Someone's asked a question about what I must say to you as well. I'm not actually allowed to answer questions directly linked to the live tasks, the live tasks for this year, but someone did say asked a question about nutrition not being taken into consideration. I think there's a little bit of a misunderstanding there, because I have said throughout that when students are choosing dishes, one of the questions they should be asking all the time is the dish suitable for the task? So if it is a nutritional task that they've chosen, then if they've not taken into consideration that nutritional point, then obviously the dish is not suitable for the task. So there is a section there where that question would take you back to the task all the time, and if it was a nutritional question, then the dish would need to be suitable and nutritional implications would need to be taken into consideration. Someone asked about the login for EAQA. From what I found, the login stays with you if you're in the same school. If you change schools, I think your login will change. So last year's login should get you onto EAQA. If it doesn't, just get in touch with your examinations officer and they could sort that. Someone's a little bit confused about the marking being out of 100. It's not. The task is still only marked out of 70. The marking criteria has not changed. So NEA 2 is not marked out of 100, it's marked out of 70. Getting back to not answering questions related to the live tasks, I can't answer them today, but you all do have a coursework advisor allocated to your centre. If you do have any specific questions about this year's live tasks, you can contact your advisor and they will help you. I think that's as many as I've had chance to actually look through during the break. I know there are more coming. Hopefully we will be able to answer those at the end and as I go through the coursework marking. I think someone was a little bit worried about how they would be able to feel confident about marking the 2 dishes as opposed to 3. The wording of the marking criteria never states the number of dishes, so the criteria stand. So that criteria is just applied to 2 dishes rather than the larger number. So hopefully as we go through the next activities, we will be able to build you a little bit of confidence. So the first activity, I'll just take that slide back a little bit. If we could move to the poll for project 1. You were asked to look at project 1 as a pre-event task and to mark that project. What I would like you to do is to input those marks into the poll No, I think we have a bit of an issue here. Right, so for project 1, we're not marking project 2 at the minute. What I would like you to do for project 1, it was a pre-event task. Those of you who had marked that, if you could input your marks into the system now, and then I will very, very quickly go through the commentary for project 1, and then that might give you a standard at which you can then apply for project 2 and project 3. Now, as you can see for the poll, project, oh sorry, right, ignore that. I've gone a stage too far. Could I just go back to the PowerPoint, please? Right, what I am going to do is to share the marks with you for project 1 and go through the commentary, and then we'll mark project 2 and put it into the poll. Sorry, that's my misunderstanding there. Right, so project 1, which is set for the pre-event task, the marks that we allocated for that project were 6 for the research section. We then did 16 for section B. We did 8 for section C, 28 for section D, and 8 for section E. Now they're the marks that we as moderators awarded to that task. So bearing that in mind, we need to use that as a benchmark and actually use that standard when looking at projects 2 and 3. And what I'll do is I'll justify the marks that we gave for project 1. So for project 1, for section A, we felt that the student had shown a clear understanding of the task. The research is concise and accurately identifies the main considerations for a diabetic diet. Good to see the use of purposeful primary research. There's an excellent range of dishes selected and detailed explanation linking it to the task. There's very good knowledge of nutrition in the justification, and there's clear reference to diabetic diets showing links to the research. So we felt that deserved the full marks of 6. Section B, there was a wide range of complex skills demonstrated, including filleting fish, making and shaping pasta. There were knife skills, flaky pastry, mayonnaise. Photographic evidence illustrates processes and good quality finishes. There's a very good explanation of the technical skills within each dish, and the candidate record form is helpful in explaining the skills demonstrated. So we awarded that 16 from the 18 marks. Section C, we actually gave this full marks. We felt the dishes are appropriate to the task. The use of puff pastry has been explained. There's clear justification for the final 3 dishes. The plan is realistic, logical and dovetailed. There are health and safety considerations clearly shown with excellent reference to food safety and temperatures. And then in section D, the candidate record form indicated that all dishes were completely produced. The dishes show challenge and complexity. The marks deducted by the teacher for timing issues gave the 28 instead of 30. The teacher felt that the timing warranted the reduction of 2 marks. The candidates worked independently, and the finish is very good and dishes are well executed. And then section E, we gave it again full marks, and for that we felt that there was an accurate and reflective nutritional analysis concluded with reference to diabetics' nutritional needs. The candidate has an excellent understanding. There was excellent reference back to the research. The dishes were costed and analysed, and sensory testing is considered throughout with clear conclusions and suggestions for improvement. So 66 marks out of the actual 70 available. So quite a high level of work produced there. So we'll now move on to the task that I mistakenly said we would be doing next. So what I would like you to do now, I would like you to mark projects 2 and 3. Now for projects 2 and 3, I want you to input your marks into the poll. So if we do project 2 first, if you look at the poll for sections A, B and C, you actually choose a mark. When we get to section D, because the marking is so broad, you will actually type in your mark there. You will choose your mark and type it in, and then when you get to section E, you will choose a mark from the poll, and then you type in your mark, your full mark, in the end column. So you choose a mark for sections A, B, C and E, and you type in your mark for sections D and E. Now, as you are doing this activity, before you start, I'll explain a little bit about how you can use the documents on the screen. What you have on the left hand page is your project, and on the right hand page you've got the marking criteria. What you can do, you can first of all, we'll start by giving you control of the documents. So the host will give you control of the documents, and you should be able to move up and down the document using the scroll bar. So up and down the document, I'll show you, you should be able to scroll up and down. You will have been given that facility now. If you look at the bottom of the document, you will see a number of icons. You can move up and down whole pages by using the up and down arrows in the bottom left hand corner. So in the left hand corner we have the icons, you can click on them and it moves full pages for you. Next to these you will find tools to zoom in and out. So you can zoom in and you can make the text bigger and zoom back out to see the whole page. Press the plus sign obviously to zoom in and the minus to zoom out. Lastly, you may find it useful to take the document full screen to view it more comfortably. Simply press the 4 radiating arrows at the top. So there are 4 radiating arrows. If you press that at the top, it will take it to full screen. If you wish to return to the normal view, move your cursor to the very top of the screen where you will see the 4 arrows. They disappear at first, but they go in, and then it will take you back to the other screen. Please ask your host if you need any help by typing in the chat pod that you can see on the screen. So I can see time's ticking away. I'll give you a few minutes to look through that, and when I start seeing numbers going in the columns, I'll share the screen with the marks on. So good luck with that. While you're working, I'll try and answer some more of your questions because there are so many. Someone's asking if fish pie is a complex dish, if fish fillets are, if the fish is filleted and the skin's removed. I would suggest yes, as long as it's carried out to a high standard, and if the potato is piped on the top, that would be a high skill. Someone's asking about working out grade boundaries for predicted grades. I'm afraid that it's impossible to work out grade boundaries because every year grade boundaries change. So I couldn't offer any advice how you could do that at all. Someone's asking about a live task this year at Street Food. I'm sorry, I can't answer questions on live tasks. I'm sorry about that. But you could ask your advisor. Again, I can't answer a question on the international street food. Yeah, yes, thank you. I did spot that. Someone's suggesting that there is a free nutritional analysis program available on Food, a Fact from Life. So for people who don't have access, that is a possible one. There are lots of others. But someone is suggesting that's a possibility. Someone suggesting that the sensory analysis staff often taste the dishes. Unfortunately, this is just another casualty of COVID-19, and obviously for health and safety, that's not something we should be doing. So it is a shame, but unfortunately, there's nothing we can do about that. I can see some of you were putting in your final answers, and it's very reassuring, the numbers that have gone in there, very reassuring. Some people are putting a few mean marks in, I must admit. I think, remember, the students are 16. I'll just give you a couple more minutes and then I'll go through Project 2 commentaries and tell you the mark that we awarded. Someone's saying that they tend to be mean with marking. Is it better to be less so? It's neither good nor bad to be lean nor too stringent, really. Because if it's too lenient, the marks would be adjusted. Right, what I'll do then, I'll go through the commentaries now and the marks that we did award with for Project 2, because I'm quite conscious that time is ticking over. So if we could go to the commentary slide, please, on the PowerPoint. Or I'm not sure if it's on the PowerPoint or just a separate slide. I can see we've got a range of marks from 29 right to up to 50. So the marks that we actually awarded for Project 2 is on that commentary sheet. So for section A, we actually gave it 3 marks. We felt that the research was relevant and concise based on the Asian cuisine, that the dishes reflect most of the research finding. However, a greater range of dishes would secure a mark of 4. So we felt it was just on that mark. It was limited with the number of dishes. And the dishes had some justification, but not a lot. So we felt it fit into the 3 mark band. For section B, we gave it 9 marks. The reason for that being, we felt there were some basic reasons for choice, and there was only a limited review of technical skills within the 3 dishes. There was a demonstration of some technical skills, but it mainly focused on knife skills, sort of cutting chicken and cutting vegetables. So there wasn't really a lot of complex technical skills included. And we felt it was a range of low to medium demand dishes that had been produced, but they were competently produced. However, the skills were unfortunately repetitive. And it worked well in the kitchen. The student worked well in the kitchen and used equipment accurately, but because of the low to medium demand and the repetition of skills, we felt that it only warranted the 9 marks from the 18. The time plan, section C, and planning for the final menu, the student had explained the choice of dishes and considered the skills, cooking methods, equipment and nutrition. However, there was limited explanation linking the dishes to the original skills. The plan was logical, but there was very, very limited dovetailing. And there was limited reference to food safety and temperature, which limited the mark awarded for the section, and it sits in the 4 to 5 mark range, but we felt it sat better in the 4 mark range. Section D, there was a range of technical skills in the final dishes. There was good presentation and finish to the dishes. Some complexity and demand evident, but a greater range of skills was required for further marks. And there was appropriate equipment had been selected and used throughout, and the candidate record form makes reference to good organisation and time management, so we felt it sat into the 20 mark band. And then for section E, we felt that it warranted 3 marks from the 8. The nutritional analysis is carried out and there's some basic conclusions drawn. To reach the next mark band, they needed to demonstrate a greater knowledge of nutrition. There was some evidence of sensory testing with some basic conclusions. The dishes were costed with a limited explanation, and there were some improvements suggested for the final dishes. We just felt it lacked any real detail and depth. So 3 marks and a total of 39. So we can see we've got quite a range of marks there. We're ranging from, well, I've got 3, I think that might be a typing error. We've got from 20s, high 20s, up to 52, so quite a range there, but that was a moderated mark at 39, so that was our moderator's mark. Right, if we can now do the same exercise for project 3, where you look at the project and again, you are going to award your marks for each section. So you're going to award your mark for section A, B and C. You're going to choose a mark. You're going to input your mark for section D, choose a mark from section E and then input your final mark. If anyone feels there are any pressing questions that I haven't addressed, if you type them into the question window, I will try and answer them for you. got one final mark in there already, which is very, very reassuring. I think I need to move along. I can see time is really, really ticking away here. I know not many of you have got in a final mark yet, but if you could possibly type in a final mark for it, and then I'll go through the actual moderated mark. There's quite a range of marks going into the box now. What I'll do is I will actually go through the marks with you. So if we could have the commentary up, please. I know I'm rushing you, but I do need to feel I need to move on. So for project 3, the total mark that we awarded was 50, and we broke that down by awarding 5 marks for section A. Very good analysis of the carbohydrate task, good use of prior knowledge, detailed understanding of the dietary group, research is focused and looks at starchy carbohydrate, sorry I'm moving that screen, and a varied range of dishes using different carbohydrates with a good focus on the skills. So we felt that was worth 5 marks, showed a good knowledge of nutrition. Section B, we awarded 13 marks. There were good reasons for selecting each dish. However, there were 1 or 2 inaccuracies we spotted related to the nutrition in this section. The student made 4 dishes and executed a good range of technical skills, mainly focused on dough-based recipes, and that unfortunately limited the marks that we could award in this section. The candidate record form was useful, saying that it was an organised candidate. However, we felt there was a limited review of the technical skills and therefore we could only award 13. Section C, we awarded 6. Student explained the choice of dishes, considered the skills and related the dishes to section B. 1 dish is unfortunately repeated, that's the chicken pie, and with limited development or introduction of new skills, that limits the mark that we can offer there. They could have actually included a different pastry and that would have helped to improve that choice. The time plan was methodical and logical with dovetailing, and there was some reference to food safety, but this could have been expanded to get up into, or needed to be expanded to get up to the 7 to 8 mark band, so we sat it in the 6 there. Section D, we gave it 21. Student had used some of the same skills from section B and produced 3 well executed dishes. A good range of skills were seen, including sauce making, bread making, pasta, knife skills, etc. The next mark band, they would have needed to include a wider range of complex skills and perform them to an excellent standard. The candidate record form states some issues with timing and temperature control, and the student has considered the presentation of the 3 dishes, which is important. So as I say, 21 we awarded there. And then section E, the nutritional analysis is carried out and some good conclusions drawn for the first 2 dishes, and these are related to the task. Only 2 dishes have been thoroughly evaluated, and it's clear the students run out of time for this section, and therefore that points, to what we were saying, that sometimes that section is rushed. There's evidence of sensory testing with good conclusions. 2 dishes are costed with an explanation, with some improvement suggested, and the final dishes needed expanding, and all the 3 dishes should be photographed together, so a bit of an issue there. So we awarded 5 out of the 8 with a total of 50. Now our next task is to actually just to agree or disagree the mark. However, for project 3, what I think I will do, I'll leave that until the end, if that's possible with the host, and if I skip back to the PowerPoint, and I'll just finish off with my overview, and then we'll, if necessary, we'll spend the last few minutes looking at that final project. But I will go through the commentary if we don't actually get that task complete, because I feel there's some important information on these last few slides that we need to go through. So if I could move back to the PowerPoint, please, now. And I'll just give you an overview of what I've had to say, and then I'll give you a few. I'll just flick through this to the overview. I'll go through this quickly, and then if time, we'll go back to the last task. To authenticate students' technical skills, photographic evidence should be clearly marked with the candidate's name or number. I think I've mentioned that quite a few times. Unfortunately, several centres over-rewarded in the past, particularly for NEA 2. High mark projects need to be exemplary, and there is a danger of over-rewarding marks because the marks will be adjusted, and that can have quite a nasty effect to the marking of the centre. The portfolio must have rigour and fully justify all decisions made. The practical element should be inclusive of a range of complex skills finished to a high standard, and centres are reminded that the NEA 2 time allocation is not to exceed 20 hours, and that includes a 3-hour final assessment within a single block period. In some cases, students have had no evidence of making in their folders, yet marks were awarded. We do need to see evidence of making. NEA advisors are available to support teachers with the interpretation of the NEA requirements, and I can't encourage you enough to get in touch with your advisors because they can be very helpful. Centres are encouraged to view the example materials on the Teacher Online Standardisation, which is accessible through EAQA. Larger centres must adopt rigorous internal standardisation procedures to ensure consistent application of the standard across all students' work. Many centres provide detailed justification for the marks for section B and D of NEA 2, but some do still lack this. And photographic evidence must be of the dishes, investigations, technical skills only. Photographs of students must not be included in the reports. In some cases, candidates' approved access arrangements for excess time can be implemented in the NEA. However, these will be considered on an individual basis. Centres should not assume that students who get extra time in a written exam will automatically receive extra time for the NEA. Centres should contact AQA directly to confirm the arrangements for individual students, and the contact details are on the screen. These materials will be made available to you at the end of the session, so that will be available to you. In circumstances where a student requires a supervised break during the 3-hour practical due to an access arrangement, this won't require extra time as the clock is stopped for the length of the break. Further guidance on this and on the NEA can be seen on the JCQ website. Links to these are on pages 12 of your commentaries booklet, which will be available after the session. Every centre has an allocated advisor. Please do use them to answer any questions. I must tell you that advisors, however, are not allowed to look at any of the students' work. Please do not rely on social media and forums for accurate information about our specification. They are not AQA endorsed. And if there's any unanswered questions, could you please now type them into the screen and I'll try and answer them. Someone's asking how you can find out who your advisor is. You'll get that information from your examinations officer. Pages and font size. We don't stipulate the length of pages or the font size. What we do stipulate is the time that they should spend on the piece of work, and that should be completed in school. Now on the screen we've got some teaching resources that are available for you, and that is on the AQA website. There's lots of valuable information on there, and as I mentioned at the beginning of the session, the new extra guidance for 2020 to 21 is also available on that site. These are some of the resources that are available to you on the AQA site. The AQA have got a friendly team that are always happy and willing to support you at any time between 8 and 4, Monday to Friday, and again their contact details are on this PowerPoint, which will be available to you at the end of the session. Just to go back to questions, one question that has cropped up a lot to advisors and has cropped up today is if our students are sent home to isolate, should the NEA still be completed in school? Because of the exceptional circumstances that we have this year with COVID-19, some of the written work can be completed at home. However, none of the practical work can be completed at home. We just that must be completed and supervised in school. Any written work that is completed at home must be authenticated by the member of staff, and to do that they just need to look at the work and to sign it to say that that standard of work is what they would expect from that student if it had been completed in the classroom. Have a look at it, read it. Does it read as that student's work? You all know your students. And then sign to say that you say that that is their work. If you sign each page that they have completed at home, that would be fantastic. The task that we haven't had time to complete was an exercise where you had a project 4 and all we asked you to do was to actually agree or disagree the mark that is on that project. The mark that is on the project is 61 or 62, and as a moderation, I think it's 64. I haven't got the document in front of me, sorry. You will have that in your pack. As a moderation team, we actually gave that piece of work 59. That was well within the tolerance we have for marking, so we did actually agree with that teacher's mark. All of the commentaries for that piece of work are in your commentaries booklet and the marks that were awarded by the team. I'm just sorry that we haven't had time to actually go through that with you this evening. I feel we've been bombarded with questions, and I hope that I have been able to answer your questions as far as possible. Someone's just drawn to my attention that it does suggest in the specification the portfolio should not exceed 20 sides of 20 pages. And someone's asking about Section B practicals. No, they cannot happen at home. Only written work. There's no practical work can take place at home, unfortunately. Only written work. I think I've managed to answer all of the questions I can. Again, someone's asking me about one of the live tasks. I can't actually answer that question, but if you contact your advisor, they can answer that question for you, but I can't talk about live tasks in this session today. I hope you found that helpful, and I hope I have managed to answer all of your questions. Thank you for taking part and for being such good participants, and I hope it has been helpful for you. Please don't forget to finish and complete the survey, as we do greatly like your feedback, and obviously we will act on that if there's anything of an issue there. So thank you and good evening. Before I hand back to Inset Online, I need to thank you for joining me for this AQA training today. I will now hand you back to Inset Online shortly so that they can talk you through downloading the post-event materials. Before I do, please again can I ask you to let us have your feedback on today's training, which should only take you a couple of minutes. This is really important to me as your trainer and to AQA and Inset Online, ensuring the quality of these online training sessions. I'll hand back to Inset Online now so that they can explain how to complete the electronic feedback form and download materials. Thank you and goodbye.
Thank you, Karen, for today's training, and to all of you for participating today. Please stay online to download your post-event materials and leave your feedback. To download materials, look for the Post-Event Materials pod at the bottom of your screen. Click on the file, then click on the button to download files. Nothing will happen in this screen, but if you look in your web browser, you should see a prompt to download. The online room stays open for 15 minutes after we close if you need it to download materials. If you don't download materials today, your next chance will be when materials are posted on the Secure Key Materials area of the AQA website at the end of the series. Finally, please let us have your feedback using the online form, which you should see on screen now. If it hasn't opened automatically, look for the linked feedback window at the top of the screen, then click on the long link in that pod. When you are ready, close the window to exit. On behalf of AQA, thank you for being online today.